This movie, this PowerPoint presentation, is meant to help you with thesis statements. It's my lecture about thesis statements. It's connected to the chapter from They Say, I Say called 3 Ways to Respond. That's their equivalent of what a thesis statement should be. So I want to talk about thesis statements in relationship to the chapter. In the chapter, remember the entire book is about joining the conversation. So they start off with 3 chapters about respecting and repeating what other people say, right? What they say. Those are the first 3 chapters we read. Entering the conversation, the art of summary, and the art of quoting, which we will continue to practice because, as I've said, is such an important skill. We need to move on, though, and can do other parts because it's time for us to join the conversation. We do this by stating our position in relationship to what others have said. This is what Graff and Birkenstein tell us in this chapter. That is, first we state what others believe about climate change or immigration, and then we state our own position, right? So in essay 1, you practice this. You said, here's a problem, here's a thing that makes me angry. This is a problem in the world. This is how I feel about it, right? So you joined a conversation, a larger conversation about these issues. The coronavirus, a lot of you wrote about that. This is what's making me angry. So you're joining the conversation. So we need to look at what a thesis statement might look like. Okay, so Graff and Birkenstein, they're the ones this is how they see ways to respond. They say, and this is, look at this first bullet. The whole point of joining a conversation is to move it forward. So you never just want to repeat what other people have said. You have to say what you think about what's going on. The essay topic, What Makes Me Angry, forces you to do that. In general, in college, you're responding to what other people have said before you, and it is not enough to simply repeat back what they have said. That will usually be a step in a writing assignment, but you're always going to be asked in college to state what you believe. Just as I say in my parentheses here, it would be so weird, right, if you suddenly had a conversation, were in a conversation and stopped saying your ideas and just repeated back what the other person said. They would think you were weird. So, though there are a million ways to respond, Graff and Birkenstein say we're just going to categorize these with just 3. So they give some, right? I disagree with what people have said. Here's my example here. People are mistaken when they ignore climate change because they don't consider, and then you give your because statement. I disagree for this reason. Then you can also agree. I agree because, right? And the main thing they're trying to say with the disagree and agree is that it's not enough to just say, oh, I agree with you. Oh, I disagree with that. You have to explain why. You have to give your because statement. That is the key. And then the last one has a little asterisk here. You probably can't see that very much, but it's an asterisk there because this is the one that Graff and Birkenstein like as a thesis, as a response to anything. And I quite agree with them. It's when you do both. When you say, look, I agree with this part, but I overall disagree with the, though I agree with one part, mostly I disagree. Or though I disagree with this, overall I agree. That, according to them, gives you the most possibilities. It makes you look reasonable because you look like a thinking person who considers some ideas and disregards others. It's the best way to respond. But you can use any one of these templates as your first when you create a thesis statement. Because your response, the way you join the conversation, is in fact the equivalent of a thesis statement. A thesis is the main idea that a writer, you, are trying to convey in your essay. It is almost always just one sentence, right? So you don't state your position for 5 sentences in one sentence. Think about Brene Brown, stating exactly her position towards the end. Anne Lamott also, in one sentence, says, this is what I overall believe. In academic writing specifically, the thesis almost always comes at the end of the introduction, right? So that's why we put it there. And your thesis has to be something someone else can disagree with, right? You don't just say, oh, the coronavirus is bad. There's no one who's going to disagree with you about that. And if they are, then they're a little bit unhinged, right? Like, the coronavirus is great. It will get rid of part of the population and we have an overpopulated planet. They could make that argument. It's a pretty twisted one and not one that most people would accept as logical. But otherwise, you have to have a debatable thesis, something that people could disagree with. It states your position within the larger argument. And then finally, at the bottom here, this bottom right here, I've tried to give you yet another template. This is one that I got when I was a junior in college, actually. No one told me this before then. Someone gave me a writing book, a professor did. It was a literature class, and he was frustrated that we weren't better at our writing. So he recommended a book. I read this book, and what I found was this template, which is, I will argue that, and then state exactly what your position is. Most of you were able to do that in your essay already. This is sort of, hopefully, a review. That's a good thing. It's a review. Okay. Now I want to put thesis statements just in context with introductions. I think we will review and talk about introductions further. Again, review this same topic, but let's go quickly because it's hard to have a thesis statement that isn't part of an introduction. In fact, the thesis is usually comes at the end of an introduction, so you need to know kind of what introductions do. So here we have it. It just basically, the main thing here is it lets your reader know what to expect. Right? You're just introducing the topic in general, not a lot of details, just generally here's what's going on. So you might, if you were going to write an essay responding to what Anne Lamott says about crappy first drafts, you would respond to that specific test. You name her name, the title of her, crappy first drafts, and you give a quick summary. If you're responding, as Essay 1 asked you to do, to a larger issue, you would do a quick summary of the key issues. Some of the big problems with the coronavirus is because it's so infectious. Because of its infection, it is a silent killer. It's easy to spread, and people don't know they're doing it. It can be dangerous, etc. In an introduction, as I've already kind of mentioned, you state your position or your thesis usually at the end of that first paragraph. And that's the most important things to know about introductions. The next bullet point is extra, okay? So most important of introductions is you introduce the topic in general, let your reader know what to expect, give them your position, right? Not only this is what the topic is and this is what I think about it, state it up front. The last bullet here is to get the reader excited. That's what most of us think about introductions, that you have to grab your reader's attention. I'm telling you right now, I'm giving you permission to not do that. You do not have to grab their attention. This is an English class. I'm teaching you to write for college. In college, your teachers are going to read what you have written no matter what. So I'm trying to relieve you of that pressure. Of course, what we're going to do going forward is look at models of good writing, and most models are going to try to grab your attention because they are writing in the larger world where they can't force anyone to read what you've written. So certainly that's something to strive for. However, in this class, do not let writing a catchy introduction scare you, okay? Some ideas for a catchy introduction, and this is pretty standard, is to tell some kind of story or example that illustrates the topic you're talking about, right? This is how I've been living through the coronavirus. This is someone I know who got sick. Let me tell you this story, right? Or you can tell why you care about the topic, right? We'll talk about this more when we read chapter 7 of They Say, I Say. Tell why this topic matters to you, why this topic matters in general. Doing either one of those will get the reader excited, will let them know what the stakes are and let them care. Okay, so that's what introductions do. And again, moving forward, at the end of your introduction, you're going to have a thesis statement. Okay, so next what we're going to do is practice all of this in Blackboard discussions. There's a Blackboard discussion that will become available Wednesday morning, and it will ask you to copy down the introduction to Essay 1 that you already did. Some of you have given feedback, some of you I will not have given feedback, and that's okay. Either way, it's fine. Copy and paste that into your discussion box and underline your thesis. Requirements are that you must use a template from chapter 4, right? One of those templates. Agree, disagree, I do both, either one. I just want you to practice putting your thesis into a template that they use. You may, as the bullet point says, you can also revise your introduction if you'd like. If you already know some things, if I've given you feedback, you know you want to change something, you can choose to do that. You do not have to. Here's what it might look like. I already set up the, it's called Practicing Thesis Statements. I know this isn't big enough so you can't really see this, but you title it, and then hopefully you can zoom in. Right here, you can copy and paste. What I tell you in the instructions for this is that you can copy and paste. You don't have to retype your introduction. You can copy and paste, but what this tells you right here is that Blackboard does not like paste. So when you try to paste there, you can click on paste right there. It freaks out, and this box comes up and tells you how to do it instead, which is simply just to hit, I think it's Control V, and it will paste it for you. So I just wanted you to know that and not freak out. And then over here, you would paste your introduction and make sure you underline. You use this right here, that little, you can just highlight it and use this little icon right here to highlight your thesis statement. If you do not copy down your introduction and highlight your thesis statement, that's worth 2 points. So you cannot get those points if you do not do that. And then the next part, of course, will be the discussion part where you read what other people have said and you respond to them. What we're trying to see is models of introductions and what it looks like to put up our thesis statements. Doing this will be worth 5 points, and you can, it just needs to be done by Friday for the practice. But this is what mainly we're practicing is, again, thesis statements, because they are very important to any writing, making a clear statement. This is what I'm going to argue in this essay. When you read this, this is what you will need to know. This is what I'm going to try to prove. That's an important skill for any writing.